Hey, Slider Crusaders, thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about one topic this afternoon. 4 years ago, we did a story on schools providing lunch in the summer. So when school's not in session, your kids show up to school, no questions asked, they get a free lunch. Thought that was a little strange. Don't know how parents cannot feed their kids lunch, considering for all of human history, we've always been able to feed kids lunch. It's part of being a parent. Even today, in the most poverty-stricken countries in the world, they still manage to feed their kids lunch, but not in America, the most prosperous country in the world. But we'll save that for another day. When that story came across, I predicted that in 10 years, we are going to have government boarding schools, public boarding schools. Why not, right? Like, why go home? You get breakfast now at school. You get lunch. And now, after school carry, they'll till like 3 or 4 o'clock. Might as well just stay a few extra hours and spend the night. Then we found out just the other day that schools are serving dinner. Like, one less reason to go home. Now, I haven't mentioned this whole prediction about public boarding schools until I heard Arne Duncan, Secretary of the Department of Education, top dog running the public schools in our country. He said this on Wednesday.
This idea of public boarding schools, and that's a little bit of a different idea or a controversial idea, but the question is, do we have some children where there's not a mom, there's not a dad, there's not a grandma, there's just nobody home? And there are certain kids we should have 24/7.
He said, there are some kids we should have 24/7. It's an actual sentence from the highest ranking government official over education. There are some kids that we should have 24/7. Let me add one more ingredient to the mix here. We know that there's been a war on fathers for the last few decades, and it's worked. It's been an incredible success. Since the end of the Civil War to the Great Society, black families had lower out-of-wedlock birth rates than white families. Now, 72% of black children are born out of wedlock. Again, never been that way before. So government has replaced the father and eroded the family. But it's not enough for him. I want to play one more clip. This is a few months ago. President Obama said this.
And sometimes someone, usually mom, leaves the workplace to stay home with the kids, which then leaves her earning a lower wage for the rest of her life as a result. And that's not a choice we want Americans to make. So let's make this happen. By the end of this decade, let's enroll 6 million children in high-quality preschools.
That right there marked the beginning of the war on mothers. We actually talked about that speech in greater length in a different video, which you can actually click right here to get more detail on that specific speech. But in this context, he's talking about women who make less money than men generally because they take time out of the workforce to raise children. So when they re-enter the job market, 10 years later, they make less money than men who never left. So the president's saying, women, you shouldn't ever have to stop working. And that shouldn't even be a choice you have to make between working or raising kids. So you go back to work. You shouldn't have to choose. Go to work. We will raise your children for you with high quality daycare. So now the government, which has already replaced the father, will start to replace the mom. And then they're going to say this. They're going to say, well, gosh, I mean, look at this. There's no one raising the kids. Right? There's poverty and drug use and violence. Where are the parents? This is what they're going to say. They're going to say, 50% of kids don't even eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner at the home anymore. So, I mean, gosh, we'll just have to take these kids in 24/7 on those public boarding schools. Yeah, you're the ones who made it, so kids are no longer eating at home. You caused these deplorable conditions in the first place. You've eroded the family. You've slowed our economy, making more people than ever dependent on the government. I'll end with this. Alexandra Kollontai, highest ranking woman in the Soviet government in the 1920s. She started the Department of Women. In 1920, she wrote The Worker. I'll share this quote right here. Under capitalism, children were too frequently, a heavy, an unbearable burden on the working family. Communist society will come to the aid of the parents. And then she talks about all the different ways that they already do. Notice the free lunches at schools. And this is my favorite line. All this goes to show that the responsibility for the child is passing from the family to the collective. 1920, Soviet Union. As you can see in America today, the responsibility of the child is being even more taken from the family and given to the government.